Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. I got to tell you, I love this Minnesota Vikings offense this season. Upgraded coach with Kevin O'Connell. I think that will be great for the passing game. Kirk Cousins could be a #1 fantasy quarterback once again. Justin Jefferson could be the #1 wide receiver this year ahead of Cooper Kupp. You got Dalvin Cook potentially back as a top 5 fantasy running back. And let's not forget about some of the secondary options like Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, Irv Smith, Alexander Madison. This is going to be a fun fantasy team, fun NFL team. And to break it down for us right now, we're going live to Minnesota. We're at training camp, 2 of the best in the business, Patrick Peterson and Bryant McFadden. Oh, wait, Pete Prisco's there too. No, Patrick Peterson's not there, but we know he's going to be with BMac and the guys there from the set as BMac and his cousin there, Patrick Peterson, part of the All Things Covered podcast, one of the best podcasts in the business. But guys, let's start right now with this offense and what it means for Kirk Cousins. Pete, you've been very critical of Kirk Cousins throughout his career. But he does have the chance to do some special things, certainly from a statistical standpoint in Kevin O'Connell's system. So from what you've seen, what you expect to see, how good can Kirk Cousins be this year?
Yeah, but something real quick. The best player from Broward County is here today, and it's me. It isn't either one of those two, by the way. So just get it right before you
didn't even start in high school. What are you talking about?
Come on. I was killing dudes. Look, I've been critical of Kirk Cousins because of big games, Jamie. I mean, that's the reality of it. He hasn't always played well in the big games. Now, there are some where he's broken through and played better. But he's got to show me when the game is big and the game is on the line that he can get it done. He's going to put up monster numbers in this offense. I mean, and there's no doubt about it. Adam Thielen was talking about it last week, how they get the big chunk plays all the time down the field to different guys. This offense will be explosive throwing the football. I think he's going to put up big numbers. But how does it play out in the big games?
Well, for me, I think we will see things play out differently from what we've seen in years past in regards to Kirk Cousins, because this is a team, Jamie talked about it during the intro, offensively, they have some stars. They got guys that can do numbers. They got guys that can be productive. And also, to transition to the defensive side, they made some additions as well. So when you look at the head coach, you look at where he's coming from, the way he's been able to orchestrate offenses, I think Kirk Cousins is going to do phenomenal this year, and that will add up to big-time wins when you look at the win-loss column.
BMac, we don't talk defense on this show. Come on, you know better than that. We're not worried about the defensive side of the ball. We're only worried about the offense.
We got to.
When we look at this receiving core, Justin Jefferson has just been fantastic his first 2 seasons. And we know that it's basically for fantasy, it's 1 and 2, Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson. And we're seeing now at some instances, because I think Matthew Stafford's elbow injury, Jefferson going ahead of Cooper Kupp. Is this the year that Jefferson steps up and is the #1 receiver in the NFL and #1 receiver in fantasy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, let's look at what he's been able to do over the last 2 years, right? His rookie campaign, slow start because he wasn't a starter, but eventually when he got into the lineup, started dominating. If you go back to last season, right, when Adam Thielen went out with that injury, many people thought that Justin Jefferson may drop off a little bit when it came to production. No, I mean, he improved. He was able to showcase that I can be a #1 guy even without my #2 in the lineup, and he benefited. He did numbers. So now when you factor in and look at the scheme, the way they're going to utilize Justin Jefferson, and even he said a few weeks ago, he saw why Cooper Kupp was open all the time, because they move him around a lot. They do different things with him. So if you put Justin Jefferson with that Cooper Kupp role in this offense, oh my goodness, lights out. It's going to be difficult for defensive coordinators to be able to find out where he is, locate him, and try to efface him out of the game plan.
You know, there are some in our work group that can't say they're wrong. Well, I can say I'm wrong because I stood here last year, remember, and said he would lead the league in receiving. It was close. He'll lead the league in receiving this year. I think he is that good. He is that talented. And when you add the way they're going to play on offense into the equation. Remember, Mike Zimmer was a defensive coach. He wanted to run the ball and play good defense. He did not want to be a pass-first team. It was necessary because their defense was so bad at times in the last couple of years. But they will throw the ball and throw it well in this offense. I think he's going to lead the league in receiving.
It's going to be a big year for Justin Jefferson, so don't be afraid to take him as the #1 receiver in fantasy, even ahead of Cooper Kupp. Both guys should be top 5 in PPR overall. Last year, BMac, speaking of being on the set, you said that Adam Thielen, I believe, was the station wagon, comparing him to the sports car of Justin Jefferson. Are we going to see?
I think I said I called him a Grand Marquis.
Okay,
yeah,
Grand Marquis.
Worse than that. No, it wasn't. It was the station wagon.
It was a station wagon. I'm pretty sure it was a station wagon.
It's a reliable vehicle.
It's a reliable vehicle, but that reliable vehicle broke down a little bit last year. We saw KJ Osborne step up, and Pete's been telling me for a year about how much the Vikings love KJ Osborne. So is this going to be the year that maybe we see Osborne take over for Adam Thielen, or can Thielen, Mr. Reliable, hold him off for one more season?
Listen, I believe if Adam Thielen is healthy, he's going to be in the lineup. He's going to catch passes. He's going to score touchdowns. Now, if the unthinkable happened that, like we saw last year, no question, KJ has really emerged to be a quality number 3 guy. And if you need him to be a number 2 guy, I think he can do so as well. But when 19 is in the lineup, guys, listen, that is a guy you can count on, especially in the red zone. If you look at some of his biggest fantasy productions, it's not just about what he does in between the 20s. He's become a reliable red zone target for Kirk Cousins. He's not a big wide receiver. So me personally, when we look at his route running ability, the way he's able to manipulate the coverage standpoint from defenders, if he is healthy, yes, he is a guaranteed number 2 option behind Justin Jefferson.
I agree with you 100%. He has to be in the lineup if he's healthy. Yeah. But they are raving about Osborne this camp. We heard it last camp, but we're really hearing it how much better he is this time around. That gives them three really good weapons in the passing game in terms of the receiver position. So this might be the last year where Thielen is that number 2 guy, because Osborne might be pushing him.
And listen, nobody's suggesting to take KJ Osborne over Adam Thielen in your fantasy drafts, but just something to keep an eye on. If the younger player continues to push Mr. Reliable, maybe we see a little bit of a change in terms of how the targets go. Last question for you guys here. And Pete, you love running backs, and I know you love Dalvin Cook. You've been talking about him being one of these airbacks, but we didn't see him catch the ball very much last year. Is his role going to change this year in Kevin O'Connell's offense? Will we see him more involved in the passing game?
No, I don't think he's going to be more involved in the passing game. I think the way they're going to run the ball is going to be, the similar style of system in terms of how they're going to run it, but they're not going to be so run heavy. So I think he'll get more of those third and fourth quarter runs when you're bleeding the clock trying to win games. I think they're a pass-first team, and then they'll run the ball. Remember, he comes from the Rams. If you look at what the Rams wanted to do before they got Matt Stafford, they ran a lot of that wide zone. They wanted to run the ball, and they evolved when they got Matt Stafford. I think this is going to be an evolution of the offense. I love Dalvin Cook. Getting Christian Darrisaw healthy and on the field at left tackle will be important for Dalvin Cook, and he's healthy now, and everybody's raving about him in this camp.
You know what? When you look at Dalvin Cook, what he is when it comes to being a football player, he can do it all. We know how prolific he is when it comes to running the football, but catching the football, he has some nice hands. So I think he will be a impactful player in the passing game in regards to the Minnesota Vikings because he can catch. He's not a running back that's a one-dimensional guy. You can motion him out. You can hit him out on swing passes and things like that, and he's very, very explosive. So if you go back and look back to the Rams offense years ago, remember when they had Todd Gurley? Remember how outstanding Todd Gurley was catching passes out of the backfield or as a route runner. I mean, that made that offense that much more dynamic. So I think just knowing and seeing how Dalvin Cook has emerged to be a pass catcher, no question. Let's get him involved.
Pump up the Florida State guy. There we go.
I'm just being real.
There we go.
Jamie asked a question. I'm just giving my honest, unbiased opinion. Thank you.
See, there's a reason we had to send BMac there with Pete, or I guess maybe more, just to step up for Pete, because, sometimes when Pete's by himself, he tends to say some things that we don't always agree with. That's why BMac is there to cover for us. And speaking of all things covered, you can check out BMac and Patrick Peterson on the award-winning All Things Covered podcast. They do a great job talking about everything related to the NFL. It's one of the best listens that I think you can have when it comes to podcasts, when it comes to NFL talk. All Things Covered podcast with Bryant McFadden and Patrick Peterson.